They told me I was living too big for a woman my age. That was the exact phrase my son-in-law used. Not "Mom, we're worried about you." Not "Is there anything we can help with?" Just "You're living too big." Like I was some kind of embarrassment. Like 63 years of working, raising kids, burying a husband, and holding this family together somehow gave him the right to sit across from me at my own kitchen table and tell me how much space I was allowed to take up in this world. I'm 67 now. I live in a small house in Knoxville, Tennessee, the same city where I raised my 2 children, where I worked 31 years as a bookkeeper at a manufacturing plant, and where I watched my husband pass from pancreatic cancer in the spring of 2019. His name was Leonard. He was a quiet man who fixed things with his hands and never once complained about anything. When he died, I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. I was wrong. I want to tell you what happened. Not because I need sympathy, Lord knows I've had enough of that, but because I've been getting messages from women who are going through the same thing, and they keep asking me, how did you get out? How did you stop being afraid? How did you finally just let go? So here it is, the whole thing. After Leonard passed, I did what most women my age do. I kept going. I paid the bills. I kept the house. I showed up to church on Sundays. My daughter Kathleen called every week, which meant a lot. She lives about 40 minutes away in Maryville with her husband, whose name is Randolph, and they have 2 boys, both in middle school now. Kathleen is a good woman. She genuinely is. But she married someone who has very strong opinions about money, and over the years those opinions started bleeding into the way she talked to me too. It started small, little comments here and there. "Mom, do you really need cable? You could just stream. Mom, why are you still paying for that gym membership? You never go, Mom. The house is too big for one person. Have you thought about downsizing?" I let most of it slide. You do. When it's your child, you assume they mean well. You tell yourself they're just worried. And honestly, some of it wasn't wrong. I hadn't been to that gym in 8 months, and yes, the house was bigger than what I needed. I knew that. But there's a difference between someone gently nudging you and someone slowly building a case against your independence. By 2021, Randolph had started joining these conversations, and Randolph is not a gentle nudger. He's a financial advisor, or at least he was before his firm downsized and he moved into insurance sales. He talks about money the way some men talk about football, with authority, with certainty, with just enough jargon to make you feel like you're not smart enough to argue back. He would come to Sunday dinners and steer every conversation toward my finances. How much was my mortgage? Was I drawing Social Security yet? Did I have long-term care insurance? I started dreading Sundays. The breaking point, the real one, came in October of 2022. I had mentioned casually, over pot roast, that I was thinking about taking a trip to see my college roommate in Savannah. We hadn't seen each other in almost 4 years. She'd been asking me to come down for a while, and I finally felt ready. Randolph put down his fork. "How are you planning to pay for that?" I told him I had a little set aside for travel. He looked at Kathleen. That look, the one that passes between 2 people who've already had a conversation about you. "Mom," Kathleen said, and her voice had that careful quality to it, the one she uses when she's been coached. "Randolph and I have been looking at your situation, and we're a little concerned. We think you might be living beyond what's sustainable. For your age." I asked her what she meant, and that's when Randolph pulled out his phone. He'd actually made a spreadsheet and started going through what he called areas of concern. My mortgage payment, my car payment, my life insurance premium, my supplemental health insurance, the streaming services, the landline I still paid for because my sister Wilma, who is 79 and lives alone in Chattanooga, isn't comfortable with cell phones, the bi-weekly grocery delivery, the small monthly donation I made to my church's mission fund. He went through it line by line, 13 items. He'd calculated that if I eliminated or reduced most of them, I could free up nearly $800 a month and be in a safer position by the time I hit 70. I sat there and listened to my son-in-law explain my own life to me. When he was done, I said, "Is that everything?" He said, "We just want what's best for you." I nodded. I helped clear the table. I drove home alone in the dark, and I sat in my car in the driveway for a long time before I went inside. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was just tired and something else. Something under the tired that I couldn't name yet. I want to pause here and tell you about the spreadsheet, because this part matters. Randolph wasn't entirely wrong about the numbers. I knew that. I was a bookkeeper. I understood balance sheets. I understood cash flow. What he didn't understand, what neither of them understood, was what those numbers represented. It was the same one Leonard and I had taken out together in 1994. When he passed, I kept it because it meant our boys, Kathleen and my son Dennis, who lives in Portland, would never have to worry about funeral costs or estate complications when my time came. That wasn't waste. That was love, structured into paperwork. The grocery delivery? I had a knee replacement the year before. Standing in a grocery store for an hour twice a week left me aching for 2 days after. That $14.99 delivery fee was the price of being able to walk without pain on a Thursday. The landline, my sister Wilma had a stroke 4 years ago. She has a flip phone she barely operates. If something happened to her at 3 in the morning and she needed to reach me, I wasn't going to make her figure out a smartphone. These weren't luxuries. These were the architecture of a life I had built deliberately. And some young man with a spreadsheet wanted to dismantle it because it didn't look efficient on paper. But here's the thing that really got under my skin. That word he used, sustainable for your age. I turned 63 that year. I was in good health, aside from the knee. I was sharp. I managed my own accounts, filed my own taxes, handled my own insurance claims without a single phone call to either of my children. And someone was sitting at my dinner table telling me I needed to prepare for my own decline by shrinking my life down before it naturally got smaller on its own. I thought about that for weeks. I didn't call Kathleen right away. I needed to think. I went through my own numbers, really went through them, the way I would have 30 years ago when I was balancing accounts at work. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, and I wrote down everything. Every payment, every subscription, every monthly obligation I had. It took me 3 evenings. When I was done, I had a list, 60 items. Some of them were things I'd set up so long ago I'd forgotten what they were for. A $4.99 charge that turned out to be a digital magazine I'd subscribed to during the pandemic and never read. A $12 monthly donation to a charity that, when I looked it up, had shut down in 2020. An auto-renewal on a warranty plan for a laptop I'd replaced 2 years ago. I'm a bookkeeper. I'd been bookkeeping my family's household accounts for 4 decades. And somehow, over the years, I'd let 61 separate payment lines accumulate without ever sitting down and auditing them the way I would have audited any business account. That bothered me more than Randolph's spreadsheet, because if I was going to defend my right to run my own life, I needed to actually run it. I needed to know exactly what I was spending and exactly why. So I stuttered, not to prove anything to anyone, to prove it to myself. The first 3 weeks were uncomfortable in the way that all honest self-examination is uncomfortable. I found things I was embarrassed about, not because they were extravagant, none of them were, but because they were careless. Money leaking out of my accounts on autopilot, month after month, for things that weren't serving me anymore. The digital magazine, gone. The defunct charity, gone. The laptop warranty, gone. Then I kept going. I called my cell carrier and asked them to walk me through my plan. I'd been on the same plan since 2017 and had never once reviewed it. Turned out I was paying for data I wasn't using and a device insurance plan for a phone I'd already paid off twice over. The representative I spoke to, a patient woman who didn't make me feel stupid for not knowing, switched me to a plan that saved me $34 a month. Just like that, I called my car insurance company. I'd been a customer for 19 years without a single claim. When I mentioned I was considering switching providers, they offered me a loyalty discount that took $27 off my monthly premium. I hadn't known to ask. I went through every streaming service. I had 4. I kept 2. I thought about the cable. Randolph had been right that it was expensive, but then I thought about the news programs as I watched every morning while I had my coffee, the nature documentaries I'd started watching after Leonard died because they were quiet and beautiful, and they helped me sleep, and the local channels I kept on during storms because I liked to know if a tornado warning was coming before it actually arrived. I found a cheaper package with the same channels, $41 less per month. The landline I kept. Wilma needed it, and that was the end of that. The gym membership I looked into. Turns out my Medicare supplement plan had a silver sneakers benefit I'd never activated, free gym access. I called and cancelled my paid membership that same afternoon. I spent 3 months going through everything, line by line, category by category, the way I used to go through the plant's quarterly accounts before an audit. I renegotiated, I cancelled, I consolidated, I found better rates. I called companies and asked questions I'd never thought to ask before. Not because I couldn't afford not to, but because I hadn't been paying attention and I wanted to pay attention now. When I was done, I tallied it up. I had identified and eliminated or reduced 112 individual payment lines. Not cancelled everything, not gutted my life, just cleaned house, kept what mattered, let go of what didn't. The total monthly savings came out to a little over $640. I sat with that number for a long time. $640 a month, $7,680 a year, and my life didn't look any different from the outside. I still had my home, my car, my groceries delivered on Wednesdays, my church donation, my life insurance policy, my sister's landline. I hadn't given up a single thing that actually mattered. What I'd given up were ghosts. Payment lines that were quietly draining me for services that no longer existed, or that I'd outgrown, or that I'd never really needed in the first place. I didn't call Kathleen for a while after that. I needed more time. The money I was saving, I put into a dedicated savings account that I opened at a credit union I'd heard about through a friend at church. Better interest rates than my regular bank. I set up an automatic transfer, the exact amount I was saving each month, and I watched it accumulate. By February, I had enough to book the trip to Savannah. I didn't tell anyone I was going, I just went. My college roommate picked me up from the airport, and we hugged for a long time in the arrivals terminal. We hadn't seen each other in 4 years. She looked exactly the same. We ate shrimp and grits at a restaurant on the waterfront, and we talked until they turned the chairs up around us. We walked through Forsyth Park in the morning and sat on a bench and watched dogs chase each other through the fountain. I took pictures. I bought a little painted tile at a shop on Broughton Street that said something my friend told me. She'd cross-stitched it on a pillow years ago. Do not shrink yourself to fit places you have outgrown. I brought it home and put it on my windowsill above the kitchen sink. I told Kathleen about the trip in March when she called to check in. I mentioned it casually, the way you mention things when you've made peace with them. There was a pause on the line. You went to Savannah? I did. It was wonderful. Another pause. How did you? I went through my finances, I said. Took me a few months, but I did a full audit. Found a lot of things I could clean up. I'm saving about $640 a month now, and I've opened a separate account. The trip was paid for in cash. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Mom, that's really great, and I could hear it in her voice. That shift, that small recalibration. The version of me she'd started to see, the one Randolph's spreadsheet had outlined, the one that needed managing, didn't quite match the woman she was talking to. I told her about the silver sneakers benefit she hadn't known about either. I told her about the cell plan review. I told her that I'd found a warranty charge for a laptop I hadn't owned in 2 years, which made her laugh. You always were the organized one, she said. We talked for almost an hour that night. It felt like the conversations we used to have before things got complicated. Randolph came to Easter dinner that year. He was polite. He usually is when things are going well. At some point, he asked how I was handling things financially, and I told him I'd done an audit and restructured a few things. He nodded. Didn't ask for details. I didn't offer any. There's a particular kind of silence that happens when someone expected to find you diminished and finds you standing. He went back to his ham. I poured myself more sweet tea. My grandsons ran through the backyard. The dogwoods were blooming. Life went on. I want to be honest about something, because I think it matters for anyone who's been in a situation like this. I wasn't angry at Kathleen. Not really. I understood where it came from. She lost her father, and then she looked at her mother, alone, 63, in a house that felt too quiet, and she got scared. Fear makes people do strange things. It makes them try to control what they can't hold. I was angry at the assumption that because I was a certain age, a certain kind of woman, living a certain kind of quiet life, I needed someone to manage me. That grief had made me smaller. That being alone meant being helpless. It hadn't. If anything, the years since Leonard passed had taught me more about my own capability than any period of my life. I learned how to negotiate with contractors when the roof needed patching. I learned how to read a Medicare explanation of benefits without calling my daughter in a panic. I learned how to do the taxes we'd always done together. I figured it out, not because I'm exceptional, but because that's what you do. You figure it out. The audit, all those payment lines, all those months of careful work, was the same thing. I figured it out. And I did it alone, quietly, without anyone's permission. That felt important. I've been getting messages from women, and some men too, who are going through something similar. A family member who's decided you can't manage your own finances, a spouse or an adult child, or someone who loves you and has decided that love means taking over. It's not always malicious. In fact, it rarely is. But it happens. And when it happens, it has a way of making you feel like you've already become someone who needs to be managed, even when you haven't. If that's where you are, here's what I'd tell you. Start with the list. Not their list, your list. Sit down with your statements and write out every single thing that leaves your account every month. All of it. Not to cut it all, to see it. To understand clearly what your money is doing and why. When I did that, I stopped being defensive about my finances because I stopped having anything to be defensive about. I knew exactly where everything was going. I knew exactly what I was keeping and why. Nobody could tell me I was being careless when I wasn't being careless anymore. It didn't make Randolph disappear. He still has opinions. He'll always have opinions. But they land differently now. They land on someone who has already done the work, who knows her own numbers, who made her decisions deliberately, and can account for every one of them. That's a different conversation than the one we were having in 2022. Leonard would have found the whole thing funny, I think. He wasn't a man who worried much about what other people thought. He used to say that the most expensive thing in the world isn't a big house or a fancy car. It's the opinion you let other people have of you. He meant it about ego, about pride. But I think it applies to fear, too. The fear of being seen as incapable. The fear that if you push back, you'll lose the relationship. The fear that maybe they're right. That fear cost me more than any subscription ever did. I stopped paying it. And now I'm in Savannah in my mind, on that bench in Forsyth Park, watching the Spanish moss move in the breeze, with a shrimp and grits lunch in my stomach and a return ticket home in my purse that I bought with money I found in my own life, in the quiet places where attention had been missing. Nobody gave me that. I found it myself. That's the part I most want you to know.